All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the Horn Takes podcast, your very rough around the edges Texas sports talk destination. I'm your host, Sean Redfern. It's Tuesday. That means we're one day closer to the weekend. I think that's the only good thing about Tuesday. Often Tuesday is just another Monday. But today we got the after-action review on this TCU game. Find out what Drunk Sean was wrong about and what Drunk Sean was right about. Then we got the quick and dirty Iowa State. The Big Ten is Ambien, folks. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We got a mailbag question. It's not the first time we've got a mailbag question, but we don't get them that often, so we celebrate them around here at Horn Takes Podcast. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. You can listen to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, Google, Apple, Spotify, or you can go to horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Subscribe there. All the podcasts go up there, or you can check us out on YouTube to see video. Same show, different media. 4 keys and a prediction for the TCU game. Number 1 key was win the line of scrimmage. I think on the offensive line, we definitely won the pass pro game. No sacks, no pressures. Quinn Ewers was able to stand back there a really, really long time in this game, folks. I thought the offensive line did an outstanding job in pass protection. I think we're a push in the run game. Did rack up 165 yards on 4 yards per carry, but half of the runs for Texas were 3 yards or less in this game. So there were some big runs, which is always great. You can't take those away, just like you can't take the short ones away. The average is the average, and 4 yards per carry is okay. But I think where we get the push from with the offensive line on this one was they just couldn't finish the game on the ground. They had to go back to the air. And I think Steve Sarkisian would have liked to have been able to just run the clock and be done with it. Defensive line definitely won their line of scrimmage in the run game. Only gave up 88 yards rushing total. Seems to be a theme. This Texas team is less than 100 almost every single week. They had 3 sacks for 24 yards of loss on TCU. I think the only complaint you could have about the defensive line really is maybe down the stretch. They didn't get a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback. But I think a lot of that was just quick passes on really soft coverage. So I'm going to say we won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Win the turnover battle, 1 interception apiece. TCU fumbled on their return. You look at the official stats, and for some reason they don't call that a fumble, or maybe I missed it being called a fumble. I'm counting that shit as a fumble. That's another turnover. Texas won the turnover battle 2-1. Key number 3, stay the storm. Texas racks up 26 points by halftime and then scores 3 in the entire second half. Texas had yielded 6 points at halftime, 0 in the third quarter, and then they give up 20 in the fourth quarter. I don't think you could argue that Texas stayed the storm in this game. 2 out of 3 ain't bad so far. Key number 4 was be right on the back end. Do not see how that is possible. They gave up 302 yards passing on 66% completions. 211 of that 302 yards was in the second half. And again, we saw the soft second half coverage. We saw breakdowns in that coverage. I don't think you could argue that Texas was right on the back end. And it cost them again in having to see another, clearly blowout game turn into something much tighter than it ever should have been. So Texas goes 2 for 4 on the 4 keys for the game against TCU. They ended up winning the game. So maybe they get like a bonus half, 2.5 out of 4. I don't know. Offensively, 482 total yards for Texas. Quinn Ewers had 317 yards passing on 66% completions, a touchdown, and an interception. I thought all in all, he looked pretty good, man. For a guy coming off that type of a shoulder injury, I think he performed really well, and he got better as the game went on, in my opinion. I thought he missed some easy throws early. There was a dump off to Worthy on the first drive that he missed pretty bad. The deep ball that got picked, I don't know if that was an arm strength thing, like a shoulder strength thing. I don't know, but it was way short. Worthy had that guy beat bad. And it was just a really, really underthrown ball. Let the safety get back in on the play. I think there was the easy touchdown to Adonai Mitchell to start out the second quarter. That was a bad miss. It's unclear. It's kind of interesting because you look at that play from the regular field view that they give you, and it looked like he just missed the throw. Then they had an angle that kind of came from the end zone back at an angle, like kind of from the area where Adonai Mitchell ended up, where it almost looked like a TCU defender jumped up and got his hand up and maybe caused Quinn Ewers to sail it. I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't tell either way. I'm going to call it a miss because I think it was. JT Sanders on the second drive of the second quarter was running kind of like a little deep out pattern. He was open. Ewers missed him. So early on, there was some plays where he just didn't look quite right. And we talked about that on the show last week. That kind of pain and discomfort in your throwing shoulder, just a little bit off can make a big difference down the field. He also made some absolute gems. That long throw to Worthy in the first quarter was about the best deep ball I think we've ever seen Quinn Ewers throw. It's unfortunate that it looked like the turf monster got Worthy on that one. The throw to Sanders on 3rd and 12 in the second when we're backed up down near our own goal line, that thing went right past the DB's head, just a little bit behind Sanders, and Sanders reaches out, makes a really good grab on that one. I think that's where Quinn Ewers wanted to throw that ball. I think if Quinn Ewers tries to get that ball across the DB and across JT Sanders' face, I think it's a pick, or at the very least it bounces off the back of the DB's head. So I thought that was just an outstanding throw. It kind of reminded me of the one he had against Oklahoma last season where he just kind of threw it right over the top of a DB that was trailing Sanders on the way into the end zone. Really good throw. And then the throw to Worthy late in the second quarter, I thought was really, really good. All in all, I just don't think Ewers was 100%, but he was good enough. He had really good numbers, didn't cost the team outside of that one throw. Thank God Jordan Whittington. Thank God Xavier Worthy kind of bailed him out on that one. Jonathan Brooks racks up his 6th 100-yard game of the season. 21 carries on 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. Average 5 yards per carry. 3 catches for 74 yards. Man, this dude just does it all. We've been calling the catalyst all season long, and that's exactly what he is. Xavier Worthy, man, what a hell of a game by Xavier Worthy. 10 catches, 137 yards. He tormented, abused, whatever word you want to use, Josh Newton all night long. Josh Newton is one of the best cornerbacks in the Big 12. And he just really, really, really outplayed him. And when he wasn't beating him, he was inducing flags. A couple really big flags against Newton that ended up extending drives. Adonai Mitchell, 3 for 61 and a touchdown. Man, this guy is just a nightmare for defenses down at the red zone. I'm really glad to see Sark trying to take advantage of that more. And then you can't talk Adonai Mitchell in this game without the big catch he makes late to ice the game. JT Sanders, 4 catches, 47 yards. Texas was perfect 4-4 in the red zone. They struggled on third downs in this game, only 4 of 13. Big drive midway through the fourth to go up by 16. I thought that series of downs where it was all runs, I think they ran the ball like 8 straight times, and then Bert Auburn hits a 49-yard field goal. Took some time, got them to about halfway in the fourth quarter, and set them up with a really big lead. Defense only gives up 390 total yards, 88 on the ground, 302 through the air. They did have the pick. They had 3 sacks all by the defensive tackles. You got to love to see that. Sweat, Broughton, and Carter. Trill Carter finally. I can't remember if Trill Carter has got himself a sack yet this season, but he certainly did in this game. It was late, and it was at a big time. Jalen Ford had 9 tackles. Ant Hill had 8 tackles. I thought the only blemish on Ant Hill's game, he got caught in the same bad run fit on TCU's first touchdown of the fourth quarter, that 17-yard touchdown run, that he did in the Wyoming game, that very first touchdown that Wyoming scored, and the only touchdown that Wyoming scored. He just kind of got sucked in, and then he couldn't get out in time to meet the linebacker in the hole. I don't know if that was to me, it looked like it was a breakdown, from his perspective in run fit. He just wasn't sure which gap he had. It looked like the defensive tackles pinched and had the A gaps. He should have scraped out to the B gap and been right there to make a play. He just didn't do it. He ran right into the back of the defensive tackle. So I don't know if that was just a miscommunication or just a mental mistake. I really don't know. But it certainly cost him a 17-yard touchdown run. Other than that, Ant Hill was great. He was active. He was all over the field. He made tackles. I thought Terrence Brooks looked pretty good in this game. 1 tackle, 1 interception, 1 pass breakup. INT came at a really opportune time. Allowed Texas to have another drive right before halftime where they went in and scored. Defense was good on third down, 3 for 11. Mostly forced field goal attempts in the red zone. They had a really nice goal line stand in the third where they turned TCU over on downs. So again, when this defense is allowed to be aggressive, when the cornerbacks are playing up, when they're playing man coverage, they're really, really good. It's when they get into these situations where the coverage backs off, it's soft man or it's zone coverage, that's where this defense runs into trouble. Special teams, not a whole lot to talk about in this one. Bert Auburn was 2 for 2 on extra points. Did have a failed 2-point conversion on a bad snap. It was interesting because I don't know what I was doing. I had walked away for a minute and came back and just saw the end of that. And I looked at my wife and I said, please tell me they didn't just fake that shit. She thought they had. And then I saw a replay and you could clearly see it was a kind of not a bad snap, a mishandled snap. So let's not blame that on the snapper. I thought the snap was good. Just got a little bit mishandled. They were 3 for 3 on field goals. So Bert Auburn comes up nuts again in the field goal department. And if we're going to keep playing in these games where we get big leads and then piss them away, all those Bert Auburn field goals that we can get are going to be important. Final thoughts on this game, guys. Games are 60 minutes long. And I think there's nothing more to say about it than the potential of this team is never going to be reached if the team and the staff don't start believing and living that like every single day. I think it's real easy to say, oh, the team, we get a lead and the team gets unfocused. They lose focus. They stop making plays. Man, I just didn't see a lot of that. I don't feel like I saw a lot of that in this game. I don't feel like I saw a lot of that maybe in the last game where this happened either. I just think, and like most things, the truth probably is somewhere in the middle. You're going to have people that say, "Oh, it's the players. They're not finishing the games." You're going to have people that say, "Oh, it's the coaches. They're changing the game plan, or they're not doing the same things they were doing that were successful early." It's probably both. There probably are some areas where the players themselves could be better. There probably are some areas where the coaches could be better. I know for sure the defense, the philosophy change that happens when this team gets a big lead on defense is killing them. It's absolutely killing them. I just don't get why you would think that something that worked for a half brilliantly the last 2 games would just suddenly stop working it in the second half. I mean, these teams aren't getting close to making a play on Texas in the first half. And then they look like the 2019 freaking LSU Tigers in the second half. I thought it was really awesome to see Sark finally come out and run the football to start a game. I've been asking for that all season long. And I've been saying I think he kind of did it because he thought TCU didn't think he'd do it. Didn't end up really working out that drive. But that's okay. I think the problem is against this 3-3-5, you got to attack it downhill or you got to attack it off the edge, and you got to do those things quickly. You cannot run all these, really slow developing zone plays against that type of defense because all that defense is really doing, and I've said this before, I used to coach my son when he was, 5, 6, 7 years old, maybe a little older, maybe right in that age range. In flag football, I coached him like 3 or 4 years in a row. And what we taught our kids on defense, what you'll notice with those kids, you can line them up anywhere on the field. As soon as they see the ball, they all want to run right to the ball. So you get all your kids in this one little, it's kind of like soccer. You get all your kids in this one little area, and then all you need is a little bit of speed to get outside of that, and it's a touchdown, right? So what we taught our kids was, we would put them in those positions, and we taught them to build a wall. And we would practice this like religiously in practice. You just move with the carrier. You don't go at him. You don't go backwards. You just shuffle with the carrier. And you just get a little closer on him, and you just sort of surround him, and then somebody pulls a flag. And we were really successful with that. And that's really all this 3-3-5 is designed to do, is keep all of the stuff in front of you. Keep everybody's eyes in the backfield, and you just kind of build a wall. And so unless you break through that wall really quickly, or the offensive line is just perfect on a given play, it's really hard to consistently move the ball against that on the ground. Like to the running back, he gets the ball, and he just sees like a massive humanity. He sees all these purple jerseys. He sees all these white jerseys. There's very little daylight in front of him. And by the time he might see some space and try to get to it, it's kind of too late. That wall just kind of closes in around him. It's also hard to manipulate this defense into numbers mismatches. They just don't really move with shifts or motions or any of that stuff very much. It's very much like the big difference that you'll see in this defense is the depth of the linebackers, the depth of the safeties. It's hard to tell that when you're looking at it. So it's very easy for this defense to disguise things. They did catch him, and they did get him on Jonathan Brooks' second touchdown run. It was really cool. They ran some motion across the formation. They ran some motion across the formation, and both the inside linebackers moved with it, and the deep safety moved with it. And then they ran zone right the opposite direction. And it was really cool because there was a little wrinkle on this zone play. And if you'll notice it, you saw it a lot later in the game. The backside tight end, in this case it was Sanders, I believe, just kind of slid against the formation, slid against the zone blocking scheme, and just got a little pick on the backside, just a little seal type block. And that's what really sprung Jonathan Brooks. What they did basically is they took more bodies and put it where they wanted to go and just had that little insurance on the backside because they knew they couldn't block the backside to keep that backside pressure from collapsing down on him as he tried to make that cut up through the center of the field. So I thought it was a brilliant move by Sark to go to that blocking scheme. And they did catch him out of position. And that was one of the only times I remember seeing it. Just so happened they hit a long run for a touchdown on it. Looking ahead, Iowa State, they were the first Big 12 team to really start using the 3-3-5 a lot, and they're really good at it. So Texas got to be ready for that again. And we've seen them struggle. We've seen them struggle in both the passing game and the running game against it this year. I think Sark, I found, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. When Sark says we're a running team, that means he wants to run when he wants to run. It doesn't mean that's what we're going to do. And Sark really wants to pound the rock in the second half with big leads. And I just think, he's going to keep doing it because you don't know you can't do it until you find out you can't do it. But I feel like the offensive line is just not consistent. And we saw it at times in the second half of this game. That drive where they kicked a field goal, their last points of the game. Eight runs in a row, something like that. 2 or 3 first downs on the ground. That was beautiful. And then they just stalled. So I think, the key needs to be for Sark, especially in the second half, is take what they want to give you. There's going to be situations where they're going to say, you're not running the ball. And Sark's got to be willing to do something different there and not try to force that. I think we need to take shots on 3rd and short if we're going to pass. We saw it. We had 3rd and 1 at one point. Instead of running the ball, we run a little hitch screen type deal with a trips formation to the bottom side of the field. I think it was the wide side of the field. And it gets busted for a loss. And I don't think the play call is bad at all. I think it's bad in that situation. They loaded up the line of scrimmage, man. The safety was tight. Usually what you'll see is when you run that type of bunch formation or trips to one side of the field, you'll see a couple guys close to the line of scrimmage and a safety sitting over the top of him. He was over the top, but not that far over the top. And as soon as that action took place, he was gone into the backfield. They could have easily ran like a stutter step with the outside receiver, like a fake block, get down the field type thing. It would have been a touchdown. Coach PK, man, I think this dude needs to sack up, man. 211 yards passing offense allowed in the second half. That is terrible after you give up 98 in the first half. And this, one time is okay, man. Like sometimes teams are just going to be better than you. But this is the second week in a row we've allowed over 200 yards in the second half after absolutely dominating on defense the entire first half. It's too much zone coverage. It's too much soft corners, playing off the ball and dropping at the snap, even in man. Dance with the one that brung you. And what got you to that point in the second half of having that big lead and your defense looking so good was not all this deep zone shit where everybody gets lost and these crossing routes. The throws are just too easy. Dial up some pressure, man. Make these guys have to make it absolute. Against zone, you can make a bad throw and it can still be a big play. Against man, you make a bad throw and it's probably not a completion at the very least. And I say all that knowing full well there's lots of Texas fans out there that are super high on PK, and I'm not down on PK. The first season PK was here, man, people were all on his ass. The defense was terrible. And my thought process was, yeah, the defense is terrible, but like he doesn't have his guys. This is a different, scheme. This is a different philosophy. It's just different. It's probably not going to be all that great. And then last year they got better. A lot of people said that was Patterson. Gary Patterson. It was Gary Patterson's defense. I didn't believe that shit. I know it wasn't Gary. It's not Gary. I mean, I'm sure he had some great. Gary Patterson more than likely had a lot of good impact on this program the year he was here. But it wasn't his defense. He wasn't secretly calling plays on the sideline. He wasn't like flashing signs from somewhere to PK so PK could, send it in. It just wasn't. They just got better. And then this year we started the season out and the defense was amazing. And in halves, it's amazing this year. And it's generally the first half. But you still got these people that they're not seeing the forest for the trees. We're one of the best in points per game in the country. We're one of the best on third down. We're one of the best in the end zone or the red zone in the country defensively. All those things are true, but you know what? They'd be absolutely elite in points per game if they just stopped going soft in the second half and giving up tons of points. They'd be elite on third down if we just stopped being soft and giving up easy throws underneath on third downs. They're literally great in the red zone because you can't go soft in the red zone. You got to play in front of people. They can't run past the back of the end zone. And most of the time, when they get backed up down there and they start running man again and they start putting pressure on the quarterback from everybody other than the front four, the results are generally good. We saw it against TCU in the second half. We saw it against K-State in the second half. To me, there's no doubt in my mind that Texas loses that game on Saturday night if they had to get the ball back to TCU. TCU was on a roll. PK was not doing anything different than, hey, let's just drop back and let them catch it underneath us. Lott's team did a great job of settling in after a little bit of shaky start, and then they ended up dominating the first half and really that second quarter. I think this team gets turf monstered more than any team I've ever seen. Worthy on that long ball in the first. We already talked about that. Brooks on his long catch in the first. I think maybe JT Sanders got him when he tried to turn around or tried to move across to block that guy. If JT Sanders, it was funny. I turned and looked at my wife and I said, why do these guys always try to run down the field in front of the guy with the ball? There ain't nobody down there to block. Turn around and just put your hand on somebody and it's a touchdown. So I think that's probably what happened there. Baxter had a run in the second quarter around the midfield area that I think he got turf monstered. And if he didn't, I think he goes. So that was three big ones just in this game that all prevented touchdowns. Some of them they scored a touchdown anyway. I think they scored on all three of those drives. But that was just this game. We've seen it a lot this year. It was good to see Texas win on some of those key drives. Remember that stretch we had against Oklahoma? That stretch we had against UH? We saw it some in the K-State game where they would score right at the end of the first half. They would score right at the beginning of the second half. And then in some cases, they scored right at the end of the game. Well, Texas flipped the script on TCU. They scored a touchdown on what should have been their last drive of the first half. TCU gets the ball back with 1 minute and 2 seconds, 3 timeouts. Plenty of time against, the PK balloon, don't cover anybody, let them throw it underneath for 40 yards of chunk defense. But they got the takeaway this time. I believe it was the very first play of that drive. They got the takeaway. And I know, folks, it was zone, man. Terrence Brooks was settling into his zone. I know. So it can work. It just doesn't almost all the time for Texas. They take that turnover, they turn it into another score. And then coming out, TCU gets the ball. They force them to punt after a couple first downs. So I thought situationally, the offense and the defense were both very good in this game. Brooks was going to be the leading rusher by an underclassman in Texas football history by a lot if he stays healthy. Again, just really unfortunate for him, really unfortunate for the team. Having a hell of a season. And then finally, I thought this officiating wasn't terrible in this game. And I think that's the first time this season I feel like I could probably say that about officiating. I thought it was pretty fair across the board. The quick and dirty Iowa State. Ames, Iowa's the next stop on the Big 12 Fuck You Tour. Iowa State sitting at 6-4 on the season, 5-2 in Big 12 play. Texas leads this series 15-5. They're 14-5 in Big 12 play. Last season, Texas snapped a 3-game slide to Iowa State. Texas has lost 3 of the last 4 up in Ames, including the last 2. Texas is a 9-point favorite in this game, and this is a big game for the Big 12 championship race for both teams. Texas has to win this game to avoid a 4-way tie that will absolutely keep them out of the Big 12 title game. So Texas loses this game, they're out. Iowa State has to win it to keep being part of the picture, and they need some help as well. We talked about it earlier, this Iowa State defense, this 3-3-5, they're probably the best at it in the country. They're certainly the best at it in the Big 12. We'll see just how good on Deep Dive Thursday. So this is no pushover game for Texas at all. I think a few weeks ago, as you kind of started looking out the future of what games would be tough, what games would not be tough, I don't think this Iowa State, and maybe not just tough, but like meaningful, I don't think Iowa State was on your radar. It is today. It seems completely crazy that Texas has to go on the road as the number 1 team in the Big 12 right now, not in a tie whatsoever. They're a game up on everybody. It seems crazy to me that if they lose this game, they're mathematically done. But that is absolutely the case. The way the schedules fall, the way the tiebreak rules work in the Big 12 this year. So pretty big fucking game for Texas. I mean, this is, I know this is going to sound crazy. From like a goals perspective for this team, wanting to go and win the Big 12 championship game, this is the biggest fucking game of the season. Heading up to Ames, Iowa this weekend. Random college football thoughts. The Big Ten is Ambien, folks. I don't know if you guys watched this Penn State and Michigan game. Boring. We talked a little bit the other day about the defense versus the offense in the Big 12, or excuse me, the Big 10. Big 10 defenses statistically are way up there in almost every single defensive category, but their offenses are way down on almost every offensive category. I don't think the offenses are that good in the Big 10, and I think that's why the defenses look so good. But, folks, it is real easy to play defense when there is not a single soul on the field that is a threat to run past you. And that's what we saw against this in this Penn State and Michigan game. That shit looked like a 1991 junior high game. Like, they just lined up with 22 dudes within 5 yards of each other and just pounded the ball at each other the whole game. J.J. McCarthy was 7 of 8 for 60 yards passing. That Alar kid from Penn State, 10 of 22 for 70 yards passing. That was 2 of the best teams in the Big Ten. That was Penn State's opportunity to get back in the conversation for the college football playoff. And that's what we got. And I think that's what we're going to see Michigan and Ohio State. I think we're going to see two offensive teams that get dominated, not because the defenses are just that dominating, because offensively they just aren't that good. I think when all these Big Ten teams start getting in their bowl games, they're not going to. That defense is going to get exposed a little bit. Mailbag question. Robert Wallace asked, with viewers only a sophomore and Murphy a freshman, how does the Manning situation play off? Excuse me. Let me rephrase. With Ewers only a sophomore and Murphy a freshman, how does the Manning situation play out? So basically he's asking, do you think Arch Manning's going anywhere? I'll answer that very simply and say absolutely not. I think Arch Manning knew he was getting redshirted. I think Arch Manning's family is perfectly content with him sitting for a couple years. Certainly content with him sitting this year. I think Arch Manning is perfectly content, and his family is perfectly content with him being in a quarterback battle, a position battle with Malik Murphy this spring and through fall camp, if that's what happens. Bobby Burton is now reporting that it's 90% certain that Ewers is coming back for the 2024 season. And we're going to have to talk a lot more about that at some point this year. But what a hell of a big thing that would be for the University of Texas. If that's true, I think Murphy is much more likely to transfer than Arch Manning. And I'm not sure the probability of that is even that high. I think Malik Murphy likes where he's at. I know he wants to go play. I know he does. But I think he's confident enough in himself. We haven't seen Arch Manning. We don't know what Arch Manning looks like. We have seen Malik Murphy, and part of it was brilliant, and part of it was really rough. So if you step back and go, well, if Arch Manning's not better than Malik Murphy right now, which he cannot be, if he was, he would have been the guy going into those games. Then what does he look like? So I think all this Arch Manning stuff is just really premature. Like, he's not ready to be the starter. And I think if Quinn Ewers comes back, if that's the case, I think Arch Manning and his family are okay with him sitting another year. He'll be a redshirt freshman. So I know there's all this noise on Twitter. There's all this noise with these fake, these fake media outlet accounts about Arch Manning and how he's going to transfer. I just don't think it's going to happen. Check us out Thursday on Deep Dive Thursday. We'll go all the way deep statistically on this upcoming matchup with Iowa State. We'll have Sean's 4 big questions of the game for the Iowa State game. We'll have some more random college football thoughts. We will probably talk a little bit about some of the statistical analysis I've done on point score between first half and second half for the University of Texas under Steve Sarkisian. Check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Follow and subscribe. We appreciate it. Won't cost you guys a thing. Email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. You guys have a good Tuesday. Get hooked.